Hi folks, welcome to the video with some homework examples from triangles plus similarities and proportions homework assignment on MyOpen Math. And so in this video, I'm going to show question number 6 and part of question number 10. I believe a lot of the other questions have videos associated with them, so that's why I'm not making a separate one. I looked at those and I think they're pretty good, but I thought 6 and 10 sounded like ones that maybe we could go over together as a class, okay? So question number 6, if a 20-foot tree casts a 45-foot shadow, how tall is a tree that casts a 72-foot shadow? And so one of the things that I really like to do is draw diagrams. I find that really helpful even when I'm trying to do homework online like this MyOpen Math, okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and draw the first diagram. Okay, so we've got a tree here, and this tree is 20 feet tall. I'm going to use that little apostrophe looking thing. You'll see that if you go to like Home Depot or something, they have like one of these means a foot, but if you see two little ones, it means inches. Okay, so we have a 20-foot tree, and the shadow, which is down on the ground, is 45 feet. All right. And so there's a little bit of a ratio situation going on here, all right? Now, if we imagine now that there's another tree that casts a longer shadow, right? Again, the shadow's on the ground, that's 72 feet for this shadow, and we want to know how tall this tree is, okay? And so I'm just going to call this X. All right, I could also use H for the height of the tree. The particular letter doesn't really matter, but I have, it's just something that I'm looking for, okay? And so once I have that, I'm gonna go ahead and set up my proportion, all right? So 20 over 45 is gonna equal X over 72. Okay. In other words, the proportion of the tree height to the shadow length is going to be the same for both of them. And so over here, because we have two fractions equal to each other, we can do what we call cross multiplication. Okay. And so what that means is I'm going to take these two and I'm going to multiply them together. And then I'm going to take these two and multiply them together. Okay. So I'm going to get 45 times x equals 20 times 72. Now that 20 times 72, I'm going to go ahead and type into my calculator. All right. And I encourage you to do the same, but we have 45x equals 1440. Okay. Now, in order to get the x by itself, I see that I have 45 times x. And so to get rid of that 45, I have to do the opposite of multiplication, which in this case is going to be division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 45. Okay. And so when I do that, what happens on this left-hand side is 45 divided by 45. That actually just becomes 1x. Okay. Equals, and now I'm going to type 1440 divided by 45 into my calculator, and I get 32. Right now, I don't really need the 1 in front of the x. I just wrote it there to show us like 45 divided by 45 is 1, but this is really the same thing as saying x equals 32. Okay, so what that means, if I go back to my diagram here for a moment, that a tree that casts a shadow of 72 feet is 32 feet tall. Okay, so that is what I would go ahead and type in to my answer box. Okay. Now, question number 7, I believe, is pretty similar. So I would encourage you to draw a diagram, set up your proportions, and then work through that, the mathematics piece. Okay. All right. So let's move on to question number 10. Oops. All right. So question number 10. Find the missing side using the Pythagorean theorem. And so before we begin, I actually want to write off to the side our Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay. Now that's something that you probably learned it back in whenever you were in middle school or high school. We've seen it a few times in this homework assignment as well. Okay. But the thing I really want to point out here is that this c over here, this has to be what we call the longest side of the triangle. In other words, it has to be the hypotenuse, okay? So that's the side that is across from the right angle, okay? And that's really important because it isn't that we always just type in the two numbers we have and then find the thing on the right-hand side. Okay, we actually have to be really careful about what we're plugging in where. Okay, so let's go ahead. And of these two questions that I chose, these are the first two that popped up. I'm actually going to go ahead and do the green triangle one first. Okay, so to do this green triangle, I'm going to write down my equation, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And luckily, they tell us what a and b are. So instead of a squared, I'm going to write 6 squared. Plus, instead of b squared, I'm going to write 8 squared. And what I'm looking for is c. So I have c squared on the other side. Okay, now when I type into my calculator c or 6 squared, I get 36. Plus, when I type into my calculator 8 squared, I get 64 equals c squared. Now I'm going to add these two numbers together. So 36 plus 64 gives us 100 equals c squared. Okay. Now, be careful. What you don't want to do is get super excited that you think you solved the problem and go ahead and put 100 in here. Because if you put in 100, then my open to math is going to tell you you're wrong, and rightfully so. Because what you found is c squared, but what they want to know is just c. Okay? So erase this. We don't want to make that mistake. But what we are going to do is take one last step to get c all by itself. So what I'm going to do is I want to get rid of the square, okay? And so the way I get rid of that is I square root both sides, okay? The square and the square root, they cancel on the left-hand side, and I get c equals. And that's really good because I want just c. Now you should have a square root button on your calculator, and when you type in square root of 100, you get 10. And so 10 is actually the answer that you want to put in there, not 100. Okay? So let's take a look now at the, I don't know what color that is, red, orange, the other triangle. Okay. And I'm going to start again by writing out my formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to plug in the numbers in the places that they tell me to. So they don't give me a number for a, so I'm going to leave it as a squared. Plus b is a decimal, 7.2 squared, but that's okay that it's a decimal because we're going to use our calculator, okay? Equals not c squared, but 9 squared, okay? Now, let's type in some numbers into our calculator. So we've got a squared plus 7.2 squared is 51.84 equals 9 squared is 81. Okay. And now I want to get the a squared by itself. And that means that I actually have to subtract this 51.84 from both sides first. All right. And so when I do that, I get a squared equals, let me use my calculator, 81 minus 51.84 gives me 29.16. Okay. Now we're going to use the same trick that we used over here. We're going to take that square root of both sides because we don't want to type in 29.16. That's the wrong answer. We need to take the square root first. Okay, so square root of a squared is going to equal square root of the other side. And what that allows us to do is the square root and the square cancel. So we just get a equals, and then we use our calculator for the rest. Square root of 29.16, and we get 5.4. 5.4 is the number that goes in the box, okay? Now, hopefully this was helpful, but if you have any questions, let me know, and I'd be happy to help you out, all right? Have a great day.